All right, so you're telling me in your example here, when I loan money to someone and they don't pay me, I'm supposed to become more confident when they owe me more money that
Yes.
they're going to be able to pay that? Because it usually
Yes.
works the other way around.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Douglas, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
What up, everybody? So glad you're here. It's T. Douglas in the flow back in your ear. Skippy and Douglas talk investing. Two real investors doing it up today. We got a great episode. And if you want to comment on our episodes, skippydouglas@gmail.com. That's our listener mail. Hit us up. We love it. Today we're talking about how pro sports are starting to sell out. We got another sale. We're going to talk about that one. Start off. Then we're going to go into March Madness. What are your picks? We're going to tell you about our picks. There was an all-in pod this week with the Treasury Secretary. We're going to hit on, talk about that one. Why America has such a hard time with physical building. And we're going to end with the latest Ponzi scheme from our favorite CEO.
Wait, are we allowed? I don't know anything about this, but it's just a straight Ponzi scheme. We can actually say that on the intro. This is great.
I said it's the latest Ponzi scheme.
Okay.
Question mark? Alleged Ponzi scheme? Well, we'll let you decide. We're gonna hit up on it. Let you decide on that one.
All right.
All right.
Douglas, one of my favorite quotes of yours is something along the lines of, "No one likes to talk about owning the New York Knicks as much as I do," right? Hey, have you heard anyone talk about owning the New York Knicks as much as Skippy? It doesn't happen,
No.
right?
Never have, never will.
I think I sent you a text message within, 17 seconds of learning that the Boston Celtics sold for $1.6 billion. Because do you know what that means? It means I'm making money. But
$6.1 billion even.
Yeah, 6.1. Let's get the numbers right. Let me tell you the five most expensive sports franchises purchased in the United States, because they've all happened in the past 5 years. Number one, Boston Celtics, $6.1 billion. Just happened this week. Number two, Washington Commanders, $6.05 billion. You see what happened there? The Celtics were like, listen, if you write us the biggest check in American sports history, and then it's yours. That's what happened. Denver Broncos sold for 4.7 back in 2022. I remember when that happened. I thought that was crazy out of market.
The Waltons came up in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's happening now is if you buy a sports team, the money doesn't really matter. It's just about the prestige. It's about the status that comes.
Yeah, that's right.
Phoenix Suns sold for $4 billion. I also think this is insane because I would argue that an NFL franchise is easily worth more than an NBA franchise, but that doesn't seem to be what the math shows. And then going back to 2020, Steve Cohen bought the New York Mets, which is crazy, to get the little team in New York for $2.4 billion.
Little team.
I mean, how else would you describe it? But with MSG, and this is not really about MSG, but I find it fascinating. MSG, it's called MSGS now. It used to just be called MSG as a stock. Current market cap is $4.8 billion, and they own the Knicks and the Rangers. So my question to you,
interesting.
If the Boston Celtics are worth $6 billion and you get to throw in a hockey team, it's got to be worth $7 billion, right?
That's negative to me. That's negative. I don't do water sports.
It's not. It's an ice sport.
What is ice?
So if you were buying it, you'd subtract $1 billion for the hockey.
I'd subtract at minimum $1 billion.
I wasn't really asking about you though, Douglas.
I thought we were having a conversation. Speaking of New York franchises, I've realized that the New York Football Giants are more into memes than creating value. When we've now brought on Jameis Winston to be our next quarterback, the memes are going to be insane. Insane. The value creation, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's going to be very entertaining. I also think he's going to sit on the bench the whole season. Besides the quarterback, though, they draft with the third pick.
He's going to sit on the bench because Tommy Cutlets is going to be starting?
Tommy Cutlets, yes. All right, let's go. Let's transition, not very smoothly, to March Madness picks. Who you got, Douglas?
Okay. Win the whole thing? I mean, there's only one team that will do it. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the kid that should be in high school, but instead came out to college early to play for none other than your favorite team, the Duke Blue Devils. Cooper Flag. Blue Devils going to take the whole thing easy.
Easy. I got Cooper Flag waving the white flag in the round of 32. All right.
Really?
Busting that ankle again. I mean, that's what my
Wow.
heart says. Yeah, I think they're
Okay.
pretty good. I am going with Florida.
They're
Wait,
looking
no,
good.
actually, let me just hit pause. Really? You know who I'm going with? I'm going with Nike to win the whole thing. Have you seen this Nike marketing campaign, Dougals?
Like the Ducks? The Ducks?
No. The actual
Okay.
sports brand. Nike has realized that women's sports are
Okay.
freaking destroying right now. Last year, more people watched the
Truth.
women's Final Four than the men's Final Four. Now,
Yep.
Caitlin Clark is not there anymore. But if you watch Nike's latest marketing strategy, it's all about women's sports. I think they're going to crush it with the tourney. I think they have some special things planned. But no,
That's not
I
a
think
real
Florida.
answer. Like Nike
On
isn't a
an
college.
investing show, it's a real answer.
Okay. That's
playing
fair.
checkers.
That's fair.
All right,
That's fair. I'm playing Go. You playing Chinese checkers?
Oh, I mean, this is the start of the show, I imagine, because Douglas is out in Vegas for March Madness. So
That's right. That's right.
there's been some upsets already.
Oh my goodness. It has been there haven't been as many upsets as there typically are, but there was one in particular that got me out my seat.
Yes,
McNeese.
that was so fun.
I mean, and it wasn't even like they were solid from end to end.
Let me tell you a story about McNeese because it's the new state of college athletics. So, coached by Will Wade, correct?
Well, for 10 more minutes, yes.
For 10 more minutes. And what he has been very public about that no one's ever public about is he recruited kids this year and said, listen, hang out with me for a year, and then we're all going to P4 together, P5 in basketball. We're going to upgrade. I'm going to upgrade my school. You're going to upgrade your NIL. This is happening. And so now, not only did they win 30-some games during the regular season, and he was a hot coach, if you win the first-round game, you continue to be a hot coach. And he's just out there. He's like in the locker room being like, guys, do you want to check out my job offers? Do you know how much NIL you're going to get paid when you come with me to this next? Like, it is amazing. We've turned it into you can get a free agent coach and he can bring 5 players with him. You write some checks and you rebuild the team overnight. That's not really how this used to work.
It's kind of messed up, to be honest. But McNeese.
I mean, free markets is what I say. It's
Yeah,
it's a little messed up. Maybe they should sign 2-year contracts or something, but they don't right now. It's the NCAA's fault.
I mean, well, legitimately, that's just the real statement. Like, obviously, that's whose fault it is. Let's transition over to, speaking of free markets, All In Podcast. I did not listen to this episode. I'm excited to, but I want to get the breakdown from you because they were talking to our Treasury Secretary.
Yes. I hadn't followed the transition plan between administrations closely because everyone on the show knows I'm trying to steer clear of politics at all points. It's not something that's fun for me. I'm bitter as can be that the fact that our investing show has to touch on politics because there's so much involvement lately. But I realized I needed to listen to this podcast because I wanted to hear directly from the Treasury Secretary.
Yeah. It's important.
And you know the guys on All In, I'm not huge fans of all the time, but man, was this an amazing podcast. I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it because of Scott Besson. Like, amazing. So one thing I had forgotten is his early time with Stanley Druckenmiller and George Soros.
Yeah, legit. He's legit.
He's legit. And this is why I enjoyed it so much. Unfortunately, the All In guys were interrupting and acting like they had similar expertise, and that was driving me crazy because I just wanted to hear him talk. But he articulates a plan which just doesn't make it to the top of the house necessarily. Like, it's a plan that I haven't really read about in the Wall Street Journal, I think because the Wall Street Journal and other things are trying to translate what Trump says on down.
Yep.
And to hear it directly from the Treasury Secretary was really fun. So, yeah, like you said, he is as bright as they get.
So break it down for me. Break it down for me.
Incredible macro bets. It's all important. That's an important table setting. I want to hear the guy speak more. I would sign up if he gives a 3-hour lecture at Harvard. I might fly there to listen to him talk. Like, I loved it. Now, the reason I mentioned the Druckenmiller piece is because I had forgotten the 2023 Druckenmiller 60-minute breakdown at USC Business School. Do you remember this? Where he just goes off about, like, very rigid view on the deficit is insane and must evaporate tomorrow. So when I put that all together, I go, oh, I see what's happening here. So Scott Bessent has a three-part plan. He calls it the 3-3-3 plan. And I'm using ChatGPT here because I didn't take great notes during the podcast. So if there's any errors, it's ChatGPT's fault. I just want you to know that. He wants to average 3% GDP growth. He wants a budget deficit to move to 3%. And he wants to increase domestic oil production by 3 million barrels per day. Okay? So
increase or decrease?
Increase.
Okay.
He wants cheap energy is core to his philosophy. Because here's the thing he said that I hadn't heard anyone else in the administration say, that I haven't heard Congress or anyone else say. He says he's all for bringing the deficit in line. He knows if you do that quickly, you destroy the economy. And he has a stated goal that he'll eventually get to his deficit target of 3% of GDP by 2028.
Okay, hold on. Can I pause you for a second? Did he comment on current actions and how that relates to his view on the speed at which you should decrease the deficit?
Briefly, but this is why I enjoyed it so much, because he articulated a plan that isn't being well articulated by the administration or the government or the Department of Government Efficiency. All the buzz headlines seem to imply, we're going to stop government spending immediately. And we're going to brag about it every day. And the efficiency of that spending and the return on investment on that spending, we're just here with a chainsaw cutting government spending.
Yep.
That does not appear to be his view at all. But anyway, here's the really important step. For each 300 in cuts, that's 1% of GDP.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay? So he says he has folks in Congress coming to him with ideas of what to cut and how to cut. He spoke to all sides of this issue, but he also said, and a lot of times I have to say, guys, I appreciate that. I think your heart's in the right spot, but we can't cut it all right now without just destroying the economy. Okay, so that's high-level takeaways are there, and I just loved hearing it directly from the horse's mouth, to use a bad phrase.
No, look, that makes perfect sense. I'm still, the thing that isn't calculating for me, and it makes sense that he would not comment on this, but is the connection between the view you just gave and the actions being taken in the government that he's a part of. Those two things don't, you said headlines, but it's not really the headlines, it's what is being said.
True. And I have a similar concern there. Where this gave me comfort, where I enjoyed it so much, was that he's not the president, right? And there's a lot of additional people in the organization that runs the government. And so he doesn't get to make the final call on how that gets communicated to the American people, or even what happens necessarily with some of the cuts that take place. But it was refreshing to hear his more thoughtful long-term approach, just because I hadn't heard it.
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
I mean, is that a cop-out on my end? It just...
Absolutely, yeah.
It is. I also really liked, he spoke highly of government service workers, and he said how impressed he is with people in his staff that have been helping him in the White House and everything. And that was a refreshing view as well, because it...
Wait, did he immediately resign at the end of this interview?
Oh no, it's not all roses, but it was a really refreshing take. Now, here's my it's not even a problem. I agree with most of his long-term plan, and think he's really bright. What it sounds like he's trying to execute, there's another part of his three-part plan that he articulates as shifting spending away from government funds and re-empowering the private sector, largely through really cheap energy costs and deregulation, so that the private sector can employ the people that are let go by the government. Again, that makes sense. Those are good talking points.
Yeah.
It sounds like soft landing 2.0, and until 3 months ago, we already executed on soft landing 1.0, and that was a 5% chance of happening, right? It seems like we had pulled back Fed and government spending and government subsidies in a way, not government subsidies per se, but we had executed the first part of the soft landing. When you totally change the balance of jobs between the public and private sector, that is also another thing that has less than a 5% chance of going well or not inflicting pain along the way. And I just think to execute soft landing 2.0 on the back of soft landing 1.0, there's basically a 0% chance of this happening.
Absolutely. And especially because it doesn't connect with what the private sector is doing right now. Like the one thing the private sector is not doing right now is hiring.
Okay, and this is exactly where my head is at, Dougal. So Apollo came out with a survey using some University of Michigan data on consumer sentiment right now. Okay, so some of this stuff is at 45-year highs, including a record share of consumers that think business conditions are worsening. Currently, that's like 60% of the population. The previous highs in like 2008 were 42% of the population. 91 were 42% of the population. It's bad. Also, folks, the median expected change in household income went from something that was like 2.5%, keeping up with inflation not long ago, to now basically zero. People are not expecting raises. They're happy to have jobs. So my frustration with the plan is I don't feel like it's been articulated to the private sector in a way that the private sector can be like, this is great. There's going to be all this talent available, and I can go hire those. I can go hire that talent and grow.
Here's the thing is I'm going to connect two things that you said. You tell me if I heard it wrong. But you mentioned it hasn't been articulated in the right way. And before you talked about the headlines. And I just think I don't think it's a messaging problem. I think it's an actions problem.
Well, you're probably right. I mean, again, I try and stay away from this as possible. But when someone in the administration comes out with a chainsaw, I think you would expect that's in the process of cutting government spending. I think you would expect a chainsaw-like approach. And then when the Treasury Secretary in a public forum says, no, we have to do this slowly over the course of at least 4 years because it significantly impacts GDP. And if we do it too quickly, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy that will end very badly for us. That's an action problem. I'd agree with you.
That's an action problem. And especially when the name of the organization that's doing that is named after a meme coin.
This is why I don't like talking politics with you, Douglas. I'm trying to be completely above board, take the high road, like just.
What this makes me want to do actually is I want to go back and listen to this All In pod. Then I want to go back and listen to the All In pod with Trump when he was a candidate. I'm curious the way he talked about things because like it's been a while. I just don't remember exactly, but I want to go back and like think about the way he talked about things and how that also relates because maybe there's overlap between those two elements because the actor, what's interesting here also is like the actor that's in the middle of these two is someone that's not a government employee.
Who's that?
Elon.
At this point, he's a government employee. He's not an elected official.
Is he an employee? I don't even know if he's an employee. Like, I don't technically know if he gets paid by the company.
Yeah, I don't technically know either. I assume he has to be. Just have.
I don't think he gets paid. There's so many conflicts of interest there that he may not.
I'm with you. So, anyway, listen to this. It's a fascinating interview.
I will. Sounds awesome.
Does having a reasonable plan, I'm not going to call it like, yeah, it's reasonable behind the scenes. Does that actually help if that's not what gets communicated and executed on? I'm not sure. But I liked hearing.
Yeah, I get that.
I liked hearing about it from the Treasury Secretary. Like,
I think a difference, to your point, a difference is that the plan or is this just his beliefs? Because if it's his beliefs, that's different than it being the plan. If it's not being executed on, then it's not the plan.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
But any plan would actually be really helpful right now, honestly. I say that it's like in all seriousness. It's just because the way you just articulated that sounds great. It's like here's what I like want to do. Here are the steps, just like we talked about last week. If you just came out and said like here are the steps that will be taken, here are the milestones you can expect, and here's the goal we want at the end, that would be really, really helpful. to hear.
This is why I found great comfort in it, because he's a smart guy who I respect. And that doesn't mean that everyone agrees on everything, but I was like, yeah, I can buy a lot of what you're selling. To your point, everything about the communication of that and how much power he actually has is baffling to me. The reason he's on a podcast that's friends with the administration rather than like 60 Minutes or I mean, how we've done it historically, there's all sorts of interesting parts of that. But I'm just saying, hearing directly from him was really helpful for me, and I recommend it. Like, it was fun. I'd like to have a beer with the guy. He's impressive.
I do think I hadn't thought about what you just said, but I do think it is kind of fascinating that if I go back historically, and people have their views on the media, different media outlets, etc. And so I'm trying to put that aside for a moment. But historically, it was Barbara Walters is sitting down with ... And now it's like they're going on the All In pod.
Yeah,
or Joe
which
Rogan.
makes it so
Isn't that
the person that, I don't know, not to stereotype, but you'll get the point. The 65-year-old grandma that might not know how to download a podcast that is feeling uncertain about some things that are happening.
They're not going to hear
Treasury. She's not even going to hear it. So,
and it's also like a bro fest.
It's a bro fest. The interview is with Chamath and David Friedberg. Is that right?
But not Sachs?
Not Sachs, not Calicanis. It's just those two.
Interesting.
David Friedberg keeps interjecting and trying to lead the witness about, but how are you going to pay down the debt? He seems to be really concerned about the $37 trillion. And what's so funny is the Treasury Secretary keeps like gently stiff arming him because of what we talked about last week, because the $37 trillion matters, but it doesn't really matter when you control your own currency, right? He's saying we spend only 3% of GDP as the deficit, everything's fine. The rest of the money, I'll shrink the size of that pot as I grow the government budget. But this dude could not get his head around that. He keeps being like, yeah, but when are you going to pay off the $37 trillion? And the answer is like, I'm not, dude. I'm like, not at all. Because I control the currency. But you can't say that. This goes exactly to what we've been talking about the last couple. It's like that the people that think of this as a household budget go, but if I had $37 trillion, I'd have to pay it off or the bank's taking my house back. You know, like you just, and that's not
and the question
at all
is,
part of the plan.
Who's the bank? Right. Like if you are the bank, if you gave a mortgage to yourself,
then you'd be like, ooh, I'm going to really write some more IOU sticky notes now. Anyway, give it a listen.
I definitely will. Thank you for the endorsement. I appreciate that. Okay. America. What we can do a couple things. We can put out, I talked about meme coins. If you want an NFT, meme coin, we can crush that. Coin, we can crush that.
We're the meme coin capital of the world at this point, man. I mean,
capital of the world.
Nobody holds a candle to us.
No doubt. No, not even one candle, two candles. No candles. But if you want to build a parking structure, if you want to get your roads repaired, if I can't today drive down a highway without having to replace my tire 6 times because how many potholes there are, that is problematic. America can't build anymore. So there are a few points that are in this piece that I want to hit on. And then please.
I mean, first, so this is written by Brian Deese, an innovation fellow at MIT and the former director of White House for the National Economic Council from 2021 to 2023. So he held the Biden administration role on the National Economic Council. And this is kind of his look back. I love there is some productive discourse happening with the switch in administration. It's like, we see you guys really wanting to deregulate this and that. That's awesome. We want to do this too. Here's the problems I see. And what I haven't seen yet is those people like come together behind the scenes and do the kumbaya thing and actually like change some laws to make it easier to build. But I like the discourse that's happening around.
I love your positivity. It's amazing. Okay, so here are a few points I took away. The highest level piece, and this gets back to the America Can't Build, is the growth that we have. We have innovation on one side. I joked about it with the meme coins and everything, but there's innovation that's happening. Electric vehicles, AI, lots of stuff that's happening there, but our infrastructure can't support it. That's the big thing. And when I say that, I'm talking about, we discussed manufacturing and semiconductor specifically, manufacturing here, housing, energy, data centers, like we can't build these things. So infrastructure, don't have it. another point is, and this maybe gets to the chainsaw we talked about, we have bureaucracy, outdated regulations, and that makes infrastructure projects even harder to get done. So like we don't have the infrastructure, and our processes and bureaucracy make it so that building is just hard to even get permission, quote unquote, permission to do.
Mm-hmm.
Another
And
thing.
the state, local, and federal governments all seem to have created this interlocking web of making things more difficult. So San Francisco, you've lived there, one of the most desirable cities in the world. Real estate is just not affordable. And yet they issued like 1,000 permits to build new residents in the past year. I mean, there's just nothing gets built there.
No.
A city that size, you compare it to Tokyo in terms of density or any of these Southeastern Asian powerhouse. I mean, you could have 30 million people live in, if it was easy to build, could easily put 30 million people there. And would there be benefits for almost everybody? There probably would, because you'd have more diverse talent. It's a very desirable place to live, and some of the world's most innovative companies sit right there. The country, sorry, I ended up on a rant about San Francisco, but the country is like, we're working with two hands tied behind our back on a lot of these issues simply because there's so many roadblocks in place. That could be said about high-speed trains. That could be said about 1,000 other infrastructure-like projects.
And so for your San Francisco point, but what I'm going to add, this is not a quote-unquote red or blue issue. It's every state. Like everywhere that you go, whether that state is historically more Democratic or Republican, it's not an issue of either party. This is bipartisan dysfunction. And there's a lot of, as we've discussed here before, a lot of NIMBYism, not in my backyard. So it's like, yeah, all these things sound wonderful. Oh, but no. But you can't do that where I live. There's a lot of that that's happening as well. And so when you have even the three things we mentioned so far, we need the infrastructure. Bureaucracy is there. Outdated regulations there. It's happening both sides of the aisle. And if you look forward 5 years, our need for energy, the percentage is 15%. We're looking at a 15% increase projected energy demand in the country. We can't serve it.
I mean, I think that's slightly outdated back before DeepSeek, when everyone thought that the only way to scale AI was to spend more on data centers. But I know what you mean. And listen,
You can bring some DeepSeek up in here.
You're complimenting me on being optimistic. Don't say we can't. Say we need to improve to be able to meet.
Sorry, I didn't say we won't be able to. I'm saying today.
Today we can't.
We can't. We can't.
Isn't it really exciting to almost transition to a place that's not realistic right now? But imagine that, like in China, right? If they want to build a new high-speed railway and it happens to go through someone's neighborhood, they just go, sorry, and they build it. And it gets built in 7 days. I'm exaggerating slightly. But isn't there some middle ground there between where we are and where...
It's one of the things that's a bit fascinating right now, I think. And this is what I'm going to say actually is political, like just by its very nature, but it's not political in any particular like mode. But there are these kinds of decisions, like when we say, got to get rid of the bureaucracy sucks, etc. Our government was designed to be bureaucratic. It's not a flaw in the system. It's not a bug in the system. It's the design of the system. It protects against the downside. It also could prevent upside. Like that's the way some of these things work. And so to your China point, one of the things that we have to figure out how flexible we want to be on as a government and as a people is, do you go, okay, we actually want to become more autocratic?
Yeah. I mean, my thought is this. My thought is we ended up here because we've had 25-ish years of pretty significant gridlock where the things that happen in Washington happen through executive orders and partisan politics, rather than if you can get 75% of Congress to say, I'll just continue with the rail example, like build the high-speed rail already, we'll give you cover to do it, then you just go do it. We've done this in our history. We've done things like this around World War II, after the Great Depression. Like we found ways to say, no, building is most important now, but what that takes is a consensus on both sides of the aisle that I don't think we've had for 25
Yeah,
plus years.
and well, I don't think it's been quite that long, but give or take, I get your point. We can get off of politics in a moment here, but I do think that what you nailed something there is that the fundamental issue right now is with Congress. Like we haven't had a Congress that has governed, that has legislated in at least 15 years. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's more like 2025. But like that is the main issue. And if Congress won't do its job, someone has to.
That's well stated. That's really where I feel like we are, because the lawsuits and regulations that bog down progress as it relates to building happen because there's not a consensus around 85% of the population wants this thing. It always feels like 51% of the population wants this and 49% of the population wants this. And if there was a consensus around this is what we're building, this is why we're building it. I mean, to go back to San Francisco, it's amazing to me that that doesn't exist already, that everyone can't see that that city is not living up to its potential because of the housing situation, and that there's not permits to build 7 high-rises tomorrow that provide reasonably priced housing in one of the most desirable places in the world. But that's a different issue. Nationally, if there's any consensus where Congress, a bipartisan majority of Congress says, we want X and we're removing regulations to make it happen, I think the building happens the very next day.
There it is. Tiny snaps. Tiny snaps.
I like this piece. It's in Foreign Affairs. It's on foreignaffairs.com, and you have to register to read it, but I thought it was insightful.
I had to get my email address. I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know where this is going,
Tough
but
times.
I did it.
Yeah,
it was worth
up
it.
In here.
Tough times. Okay. How we fit in to wrap this up is we're going back to our favorite S&P 500 CEO of this man, Michael Saylor. I love this man. I mean, he's like Jameis Winston.
Yeah, for the record, I don't love this man. There's no love in my life for this man.
How do you go from this man 27 years ago or something like that, late 90s, starts an analytics company that is now a Bitcoin company? It's fascinating. Absolutely. You talk about a pivot. He just gave on up is what he did. And his board was like, okay, cool. That sounds fantastic.
You know what? I mean, we talked about a while back how this company used to be called MicroStrategy, and then they dropped the micro and just called it strategy. You know how bold that is?
They do big strategy now.
No, but what they do is the opposite of strategy. They buy Bitcoin, and they find ways to issue stock. I don't even know this latest Ponzi, but I'm sure it's some sort of, hey, we'd like to get more money to buy more of this good that has an intrinsic value of 0. No, not at all.
And do you know PwC, their strategy consulting arm? Remember what they changed their name to?
No.
Strategy ampersand. So there's precedent. There's precedent for this. All right. I'm going to give you a breakdown here.
Strategy and what? Strategy and taxes? Like, come on.
And whatever you need. Just strategy and whatever you need.
And a bill for additional
exactly.
fees.
Strategy and an invoice. Strategy and an invoice. Okay, so MicroStrategy, you can't make this up. They have a preferred stock offering that they're calling Perpetual Strife. Okay, I'm just going to throw that out there. You can't make this stuff up. It's a 10% yield on this to buy Bitcoin. So they're putting out preferred stock so they can buy more Bitcoin.
Okay.
It gets juicy. Like, if you just told me that, I'd be like, okay, this is already ridiculous. Like,
wait, yeah,
Strife.
I mean, I have so many questions. How is the yield? I mean, there's no Bitcoin yield, despite Michael Saylor trying to claim there is. So, explain. Go ahead.
Yep. Okay, so if they don't pay this dividend, this 10% dividend, guess what happens?
Nothing.
No, that would be better. What happens is they keep increasing the dividend.
But this is our self-financed house. It's like more IOUs.
Yeah. So
can you walk me through a real life example? I'm baffled. I promise to be quiet.
So here's an example. If it were me and you as humans, this is what this is. You give me, let's call it a loan. I know this isn't a loan, but I'm just saying if it was the two of us, and I'm like, as collateral, so just so you have confidence that I'll pay you, if I don't pay you, I'll owe you more. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that just makes sense. So it's a 10% dividend yield. If it goes unpaid, it will increase up to 18% annually.
All right, so you're telling me in your example here, when I loan money to someone and they don't pay me, I'm supposed to become more confident when they owe me more money?
Yes.
That they're going to be able to pay that? Because it usually works the other way around.
I've only seen this in the movie The Town.
Don't recall that one. But so is this 10%? Okay, again, back to just my dumb questions. This 10% then gets paid in cash, US-based dollars, back to my brokerage account?
Or it doesn't get paid, but it increases.
Yeah, I know, but why would Michael Saylor support paying me money in a fiat currency? I'm confused.
Well, he can't pay it in Bitcoin because Bitcoin isn't real.
He can't. He absolutely can. Because
okay, hold on. Can I give one last thing? One last thing. There's a liquidation preference here. It adjusts daily to reflect the market price. It's a crypto levered fixed income product that is wrapped in an enigma of meme stock energy.
Okay. You said it. That's a good way to describe it. There is zero chance. This is one of those, if I get kidnapped and someone has a gun to my head and they're like, listen, you can go as long as you buy the preferred shares of Strategy. I'd be like, no, let's just end it now. Oh my goodness. Okay. So question for the listeners, and listener mail is skippydoogles@gmail.com. This week I was trying to think of a time of an investing product where someone added complexity and it worked out well for everyone. Now, I'm not talking, I decided to put leverage on my NVIDIA stock and it happened to be the best performing stock of the last 20 years. I'd argue that's basically luck and unnecessary risk taking because you would have made 20,000% regardless. But Douglas, can you think of a time? I mean, listen, if you're a Bitcoin bull, don't buy the preferred shares of Strategy with some nonsense yield that's not going to get paid. Just buy Bitcoin. Like, can you think of a time where added complexity has really served the investor well? I don't even understand that. I mean,
the issuer,
this is so bizarre.
It serves the issuer quite well.
Of course, complexity always does. In investment management, complexity usually is a reason to charge a fee. Like, that's it. I'm sure that's what's happening here. But please, guys, if you can think of a good example of when making investment products more complex has served the investor well, I'd love to hear it.
Crickets. I love, in the movie The Big Short, you've seen this movie, I assume.
Yeah, I'm going to have to watch it again, though. I don't remember it all.
Yeah, I watch it every morning. It's a beautiful movie. There's this scene where Steve Carell is sitting down and talking to, there's like an Asian guy who's an investor. And they're in Vegas, they're at some conference, and they're sitting down and talking. And the guy is explaining to him how, like, you can buy a mortgage, or you can buy a collection of mortgages, or you can buy someone betting on what the performance of that collection of mortgages, or you can buy, this is where he was, he's like, I buy the bets on the collection of mortgages. It's like, what the heck is happening here? Like, legitimately, if we've talked plenty of times on this pod about our own, or let me talk for you, my own personal feelings about Bitcoin, not as a speculation, go do your thing. Call a spade a spade. But as an investment, my personal feelings, non-positive about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But then when you're like, okay, Bitcoin's going to your point, pay a yield in a fiat currency, you go, hold up. Now you've lost the thread on why Bitcoin was an investment to begin with.
Through the entity of a company that used to be a analytics firm. It makes
exactly
no.
With the dividend that bets on itself, that if it doesn't pay, it will just increase. And then you have like a mark-to-market pricing that just increases volatility. This is like a Michael Saylor at this point, because I've never met the man, but I guarantee you he's very smart.
Absolutely.
But
yeah.
At this point, he's just playing. He's like, what else can I do? I made a 99-slide 3-minute presentation, and you all still like watch the video and you love it. I'm going to release this. You're always going to buy it. He's like, what won't the market handle?
Yes. My middle schooler wanted to do some investing this week. And what's hot to talk about in middle school? Obviously Bitcoin, right? So he's like, Dad, we'll just buy some and then do this. And then I saw the other day it went up 2%. So we had to have the talk, Dougals. That's a joke. It was like, I was like, tell me another company you like. He goes, Microsoft. I was like, oh, check this out. With Microsoft, you as an owner get access to $117 billion in profits each year. Oh my goodness. Did you know you get access to hundreds of billions in cash? Did you know they also pay a dividend? Like, his head just exploded. He was like, wait, I would own a piece of that? And I kept being like, and what would you get with Bitcoin? Like, what is the profits of Bitcoin? And he'd be like, $0. It was hilarious. I mean, to
Bitcoin.
watch a middle
The
schooler
profits
be
are
like,
Bitcoin.
yeah. And I think he fully understands the difference between speculation and investment now. We'll see. But the access to profits is pretty dang nice. I'm a fan.
No, it's really nice.
Let me just tell you that.
And they can increase, like, in ways that you understand. Like, they sell more goods.
Yeah, they can increase. All right. Thanks for hanging out with us today, guys. Check out the YouTube. We have a channel there, Skippy Dougals. All the other podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, etc., Spotify as well.
Yeah.
We still have stickers. If you're sending in reviews, just holler, skippydougals.com. And if you want to make fun of us, we will make fun of you back, skippydougals@gmail.com.
Thank you, everybody.